Good evening and welcome to the Hibs Observer Wednesday debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by our Netherlands correspondent Patrick McPartlin, all the way from Hibs training camp on the continent. Patrick's been he's followed the team out to their pre-season camp. He's been speaking to players, manager, and he got a look into today's friendly victory over Duisburg. I hope that is the right way to pronounce that. Could you correct me? Is that because I should maybe I looked that up before we started? But yes, can you
I've heard a few
just
different pronunciations, so I think we're good.
okay. If it's not set in stone, then I can keep it ambiguous. I'll just not say it again for the duration of the video. So, firstly, Patrick, how are things over there? What's the kind of general setup been like? What have you kind of been your impressions?
I think first impressions are that it's a chance for David Gray to really work the players as hard as possible. There's been kind of triple sessions, I think each day so far, and a lot of knackered looking players walking around. Usually starting off with sort of some outdoor training in the morning, and then some gym work in the middle of the day, followed up by some more stuff on the pitch in the afternoon slash evening. And at the moment, it's really about sort of working on that, fitness levels, getting guys up to speed. You've obviously got boys who are away on international duty, so they're still kind of getting up to speed. And I think there's obviously a little bit of tactical work, a little bit of kind of small-sided exercises as well, just to try and get the legs going. And obviously today's friendly as well was another chance for players to get sort of 45 minutes under their belt before Saturday's friendly against Pauk, and then obviously the start of competitive action away to Elgin on July the 13th. But it's a really good setup here in this undisclosed location.
Top
Understandable, I think
secret.
that top secret. Understandable, I think that Hibs are wanting to keep excuse me, are wanting to keep the sort of the details quiet and sort of away from sort of having a horde of fans descending on the training camp, because it's a distraction that they don't need really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been really good, from the players and the coaching staff's point of view, that they're just able to kind of get on with working on things on the training pitch, and team building, just sort of building those bonds between the squad, between the players, and also a chance, for some of the players who were out on loan last season to come back and kind of stake a claim for further involvement. Apart from the new signings, you've got guys who haven't really played much with each other just because of the time they've arrived at the club. They've then been out on loan, or there's been injuries and things like that. So there's still a lot of work to be done on just getting the team to gel, I suppose, for want of a better description. Obviously helped by the fact that David Gray does know the players. He's played alongside some of them. He's coached most of them, so he does know strengths and weaknesses, which I think is kind of helped in terms of being able to put out teams against Edinburgh City, and obviously today against the German team. Played it safe there. Just to kind of see where they're at and to see what's working, what doesn't. Just with a view to knowing what his strongest sort of starting team is for the start of the Premier Sports Cup group stages.
Yeah, I suppose I think it was when Malky Mackay said, David's he's actually got a bit of a head start for having already been in the building. And I guess, he'll be able to skip certain elements of getting to know certain players and this and that, and then just really kind of accelerate what he's wanting to implement, as you say, because it's all building up to the 13th against Elgin. So, I mean, yourself, you've been kind of in and around things and around the team hotel, getting to speak to various people. We've had 2 interviews go up on the Hibs Observer website over the past 24 hours or so. First with Joseph Bursik, and then the second with Warren O'Hara. I mean, Bursik was... It's always great when you get into one of these and it's a player you've never spoken to before, and then you come out of it with something just completely off the wall and completely different. It was a really kind of fascinating backstory that he's got, isn't it?
It really is, and I think, I mean, we do our research before you speak to players. You know their backgrounds, but even then, like, just the kind of scale of everything and what happened and how it happened, it's just sort of quite incredible. I don't want to sort of repeat everything that Joe said to us, so I can direct you to the Hibs Observer website to go and read that. It is Even though I say so myself, really quite a kind of startling read. It's long story short, is his grandfather is essentially a Czech war hero, and was, I think, in the first tank that liberated Kiev in World War II, and it just sort of goes from there, and it's just quite a, it's an amazing bit of family history, and I think, you could see from speaking to Joe that it's something he's very proud of, and quite rightly so, and there is that sort of little bit as well, where he's represented England up until under 21 level. He's been really successful with them. Won the under 17 World Cup. Got to the final of the under 17 Euros as well. Both in 2017. But there have been overtures from from the Czechs, who I think would probably quite like the chance to have the grandson of such a sort of national hero, sort of represent them on the international stage. So that's something maybe to look out for. But I think as well, just what came across was just, he's still a young guy, but he's especially for a goalkeeper as well, but just really, really laid back, really, really kind of calm and relaxed. You can see why, Hibs were keen to get him in from a kind of character point of view. But on the pitch today, again, it was just 45 minutes, but he's so vocal. And I just think that was one of the problems with Hibs last season, was just the number of goals they conceded and how they conceded them and when they conceded them.
Mhm.
And it's a small sample size so far, but I think in Joe they've got a really kind of vocal keeper who'll be organising his defence, good with the ball at his feet. Not really had a chance to see him sort of in action much. There's not really been, he's not really been tested against Edinburgh City or today against Duisburg. So there's there's maybe a bit of the unknown about that, but everything else points to it. Get it out. Points to it being like a really kind of smart signing, and the fact that he's had his injury problems, he's not really featured for Club Brugge apart from their B team, and I think just somebody who's desperate to get out there and be playing every week and sort of doing everything in his power to help take Hibs to where everyone at the club believes they should be.
Yeah, and what were your impressions speaking to Warren Ahora as well? Again, somebody who's got a kind of interesting career. He's been around. He's got international ambitions as well. How did he come across?
I think the best way of putting it is, if I was a brick wall and Warren O'Hora was nearby, I'd be very nervous. He just strikes me as the kind of player who would head everything that moves. I mean, he's not he's not like a kind of industrial centre back. He's very good on the ball. Saw that today. He was playing alongside Marvin Ekpiteta today for the first time, but the two of them sort of dovetailed really well. And I think again, it's another character for the dressing room, but from the little we saw today, just really good on the ball. Just pre-season friendlies mean very little, but did look to be just really comfortable in possession. Positioning was really good. He's an aerial threat as well. Both of them are really tall. Centre back. I think O'Hora's 6'2", Ekpiteta 6'4". So there's that added height. They're a threat at set pieces, and I think it's probably quite a big step for him coming from League Two, albeit he has spent sort of 3 seasons in League One with MK Dons, but it's a big sort of step for him.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up to the Scottish Premiership, but it's a challenge that he wants. He wants to improve himself. He wants to take the next step, and he sort of talks about these sort of pinch me moments that he can't believe a club like Hibs came in for him. But I wouldn't mistake that for kind of being overawed by everything. I mean, he's very much like settled in well. That's been the message from from David Gray, from the other players, that basically come in, they've settled in really well, even though they've only been in the building for 10 days, 2 weeks at most. And I think just getting a chance to be working with their teammates 3 times a day in terms of the triple sessions, and
Yeah.
getting that experience of playing alongside them in games and getting 45 minutes under the belt here and there is just going to be really useful. And I think generally the mood in the camp does seem to be very positive. A lot of positivity about David Gray, a lot of positivity about the squads, a lot of positivity about where they feel they can take the team this year. And I think it's something that's been sort of badly missing from Hibs recently, and understandably so, given how last season panned out, and sort of change of manager twice, that sort of thing really does kind of contribute to a bit of a negative atmosphere. But it certainly does feel like there's a very positive atmosphere, and the fact that they're still smiling after 3 sessions and being absolutely run into the ground probably says quite a lot as well.
Smiling through the pain, I'm sure. So, I mean, again, it was only the same with Bursik and Ahora. It was only 45 minutes in what's essentially a training game. But as you said, Marvin Ekpateta, he started alongside Ahora. I mean, we did a piece on him the other day, and he's sort of he's kind of raw with numbers before you even watched him as a player. Kind of suggests somebody who's a kind of real defend first, ask questions later type of player. Were you able to get much of an impression of him at all in that first half?
Yes and no. I mean, Duisburg have kind of fallen from a decent level. It's not. I don't think it's that long ago they were playing in the sort of second tier of German football.
Yeah,
They're now in the fourth. They got relegated at the end of last season. But I'd still say like a decent level. For Hibs to kind of test themselves at this stage of pre-season. But I wouldn't say he was really properly tested today. I think Pauk on Saturday will be a much sterner test, and I think we should get more of an indication of what he's about. Um, I mean, clean sheet today in both halves, which has obviously got to be a good thing. And like the defensive pairings or defensive groups in both halves did contribute to that. But very difficult again to say it's a preseason friendly. It's
yeah,
it's hard to sort of to really get a kind of obvious, if you like, an obvious kind of picture of what he's going to be like. But you're not sitting there thinking, why have they signed him? You can sort of see just whether it's like movement, positioning, reading of the game as well. Just really, looks like a solid signing and just exactly the sort of thing that Hibs have been sort of crying out for at the back for, well, probably quite a few years, to be honest.
yeah,
And I think, we've maybe seen in the past, Hibs have had centre backs who maybe be a little bit too similar. And I think, when in Ekpateta and the Horror, you've got two sort of, very different defenders, but both, sort of bringing strengths to the back line that, are certainly needed to, kind of, I suppose, just kind of shore Hibs up at the back, take them to, try and take them back to where they want to be, and hopefully be losing fewer goals and, not conceding so late on in so many games as we saw last season.
yeah. Hopefully, a clean break from that. Again, I mean, just on the game in general. I mean, obviously, you've got a goal from a set piece, as I saw on Twitter, which must have been quite refreshing to see. Didn't see too many of them last season. Obviously, you got the likes of Ahora and Ekpateta and amongst it on set pieces for the coming season. But it was Man Mountain Josh Campbell who got on the end of the free kick. I mean, again, did it have that kind of training game feel? Just getting minutes into players, trying things out. Difficult to read too much into it. Was that the kind of impression you came away with? Just
Yeah, I
overall.
think so. I think that's a fair comment. I think you quite often see with these pre-season friendly games that it starts off at a decent intensity, and the first half is maybe it's good from the point of view of there's enough going on, there's chances, there's a lot of passing going on. It was the same this game, like the first half, good intensity, players playing well. I think it was quite obvious that Duisburg couldn't really cope with, Martin Boyle. There were, a couple of late challenges, things like that, just which is, is to be expected at this time of year. But it's just that sort of, it's the pace that he's got, his trickery. So did break the game up a little bit, but Hibs kind of, they were in control. They scored a second goal ruled out for offside as well, which from our vantage point couldn't really tell if it was a close one or not. But they didn't ever really seem to be under real threat. But then the second half, when you make sort of multiple changes as both teams did, then you've got that any
Mhm.
momentum you have just sort of like peters out, and
Yeah,
the game did sort of it did fizzle out a little bit. There wasn't really an awful lot to talk about from the second half, but it's really all about sort of just getting players minutes. And like I say, you've got players who haven't played alongside each other before, or players who haven't played together for a long time. So I think it's just good to kind of refamiliarize, certain players, or give guys a taste of playing alongside each other for the first time. So I mean, it's not. I don't think it's the sort of thing. Whether it was a 10-0 victory, whether it was a 1-0 victory, a 5-all draw, whatever. It never does well to kind of take too much out of these games. At this stage, it really is about about fitness. And then with a bit more work during the week, then with Pauk towards the end of the training camp, that's where we might see a little bit more in the way of a kind of game plan, if you like. But at the same time, it's really, the training camp is really a chance for Dave Gray to work closely with the players and sort of get his ideas across, what he wants from them, and to get them used to the way he wants them to play. So Pauk will be I think a stiffer test than they faced today, and certainly harder than Edinburgh City last weekend. But we'll wait and see what comes out of that. I think with them letting fans into this game, and it's obviously a higher caliber of opposition. No disrespect to Duisburg, but Greek champions, bit of a step up. So I think it'd be quite good for Hibs to be able to test themselves against a team of that quality, and it should sort of give them the coaching staff and the players some idea of where they are going into the trip to Borough Briggs to face Elgin in that first League Cup game.
Yep, Saturday you definitely expect to be a sterner test, and obviously you'll be there right through the week and that game as well. So obviously we've had, just to finish up, we had plenty of content on the website so far. We'll be bringing you more of these videos as well, but as I imagine, plenty more to come through the week.
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. Don't want to give too much away, but we do have a couple of really good interviews coming from the camp, and should be sort of longer chat with Dave Gray this week as well at some point, which I think would be good to just hear a bit more from him about how pre-season is going, how he feels the players are shaping up, and just all manner of things really. So again, just really good to have this sort of access and just hear from the players and from David Gray how things are going, and just get a feel for how kind of preparations are sort of panning out. And it does seem, like I say, from just being around the players, from being around the camp, it's things are in a good place. Players are all a lot of happy smiles, a lot of banter as well, which I think is what you need and what you expect on a trip like this, and a lot of hard work as well. So I think that's all you'd really want from a training camp, and the fact it's away from from like any, I say away from the public eye, which isn't strictly true, but this is a very quiet part of the Netherlands, not a lot of people around, and I think that's exactly what they needed, just to be able to work through everything that they needed to work through. So it is certainly a very pretty part of the Netherlands, I will say that. Even if the weather hasn't been quite what we might want. It's been very similar to back home, to be honest. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely not missing much back here, I can assure you. So yeah, there you have it, folks. We're going to leave it there for today. Just echo everything Patrick said. There'll be more content coming through the week, so make sure, if you haven't done already, check out hibsobserver.co.uk/subscribe, where you can take a look at taking up our £4 for 4 months offer. That'll give you access to absolutely everything from the pre-season camp, and obviously heading into the new season as well. We'll be back with more video through the week, so make sure you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, because we really, really do appreciate that as well. But we're going to leave it there. I'll let Patrick get on, but thank you as always for joining us, folks, and we will catch you again very, very soon. Cheers.